F10 again because you can't hit it too many times. Okay, so anybody who's with us online, welcome to Tech Tuesday. Today's Tech Tuesday is about Moodle quizzes, and we're gonna really do basic today. And it may not sound like basic, but it's to get people started using the quiz. So today our plan is to go over how to set up a quiz, how to organize your questions in the categories, and really we're only going to go over one kind of question today. And the next week, actually not next week because that's OETC week, week after next we'll start doing the other kinds of questions. Okay, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. So I'm going to be working right here in chapter 5, which is empty, so I'm going to turn editing on. This is built off of a previous person's class, so there's already a bunch of questions in the bank, and I'm going to kind of show you why we're doing what we're doing as far as categories. So I'm going to start with how to add a quiz. So we just add an activity or a resource, and we go down to quiz. And the first part of this is going to go over the settings for a quiz. So if you don't know any of these activities, when I click on them, I can read about what a quiz is over here on the left, but all I have to do is click quiz and click as, and quiz is test, quiz, formative assessment, whatever you want to use it for. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is add a name. If it's got in red and it's got the little star, that's required. This is what the kids will see. So I might start with chapter 5 pre-test quiz, okay? So I'm saying this is going to be a quiz that the kids are going to take, and they have to take and pass in order to move on to a test or something. It could be a daily summative, a daily formative, chapter, it doesn't matter how we're going to use that, okay? Description down here might be information that you, first of all, there's no red, so you can put nothing in there. This is where I put in mine. This test is open book, open note, closed internet, or open internet, and I put the rules of the test. Any students found using Google Doc to talk to another student will receive a 0 on this test, or whatever. You know, whatever your classroom rules for tests, you might want to put it in there. So they have to read it before they go on. I put open note, open internet, or closed internet, or whatever that they are. I also will put in the description the time limit, so they know it before they get into the quiz. Kids get kind of freaked out sometimes because they don't know there's a time limit. All of a sudden they say enter quiz and you've just given them 5 minutes, and they would have done one more thing if they would have known. So I will add that in the description personally if there's a time limit, and there almost always is on mine. Or at least make sure they know before they hit enter the quiz. So that's the initial setup. Now I could just go down here and hit save, and I've made a quiz. But we're going to go through all the settings today. Okay. This checkbox, are we going to mention that? That checkbox makes it show up like a label underneath the quiz. So if I said, in fact, I'll go ahead and do it. This quiz is open note and closed internet. Okay, let's say that's my notes, or I can put whatever I want. That checkbox, if I don't have that, they won't see it. But I'm going to go ahead and save and return to course. And we're going to see chapter 5 now. I'm just going to go back here to chapter 5. So you can see whatever I put in there, if I hit the checkbox now, says it underneath the quiz. If I don't, all they'd see was that. Okay? So I'm going to go back in and hit the little gear to go back into it again. So I don't normally do that, by the way, because I usually have stuff there, but you definitely could have that there so the kids know. Okay, I'm going to hit expand all up here in the top right-hand corner so we can look at all the settings. Realizing that was enough to start a quiz if I wanted to. Now I'm going to look at the advanced options available to us. Okay, so the first one is timing. When does it open? I always use that. The reason I always use this one is so it shows up on the calendar. They can't ever say, I didn't know we were going to have a test on Tuesday. Okay, because we just had a test on Monday in my class, and I was like, I forgot to say on Thursday, remember we have a test on Monday. I forgot to say that. I had a second block. I came in third block. They all knew, but now it's been on the calendar for 2 weeks. And I sent them all an email. And they've seen it every single time they come in the Moodle. So if they say that, but anyway, so that's what that does. First of all, it doesn't let them go into the quiz until that date. But I always use that one. You can hit enable. and then just hit the calendar there and say, okay, this is going to be, and this is the easiest way to use it. It's going to be on February 12th, and then I won't open it until the class starts, so I'm going to put 7:30 there, okay? By the way, if you put 1400, it means they can't get into it until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I put the start of the school day. I don't personally ever put close on there. You can if you want to. If you have it set to only do it once, but you might have a quiz that they can take as many times as they want to between now and next Friday. So then maybe you do have a close date, okay? If you've got some reason to have the quiz closed. But that's what that, after that date, they can't enter it even if they've never done it before. So I normally don't set that. I could see definite reasons to do it though. Time limit. Okay, time limits are great. I do use time limits a lot. Like for a normal class period, I'm going to set 70 or 75 minutes. And I'm hoping that never happens, that they hit that time, but it keeps them reminded. It stays up here in the top left-hand corner. They can't get rid of it. No matter what they scroll up and down, it's going to continue. Now, freak some kids out. Oh, well. Okay. So, I mean, they need to get used to taking time tests. So I don't do it on everything, but on tests, I always do. Because what happens at the end of the class when they go, I'm not done? Well, you knew there was a time limit the whole time. If it's an IEP kid, maybe we give them more time. But I do use time limits, especially on tests. On quizzes, no. On summative, you got to get done this period. It might take the whole time. I definitely do. Okay, this is a got you. This is the default on a new quiz right here. When the time expires, what happens? Well, open attempts are automatically submitted. That's the default on a new one. But on an old one that you might have had from, well, you didn't, but if somebody had one from 5 years ago, and as we upgraded Moodles, it says this: attempts must be submitted before time expires or they are not counted. So I always switch that to the other one, because if it's on this and it's 70 minutes, it's closed, you fail. Because it says must be submitted or they are not counted. I hate that's even an option there. So that's and that only affects old quizzes that have been upgraded. So my quizzes, every time I have to go, submit it automatically. And then you have this other options. There's grace period that you can still submit, but you can't answer any more questions. In other words, when 70 minutes is up, if you pick this one, they can't fill in a new answer on another question, but they can still submit the test for grading.
That offers no advantage over just.
Well, yeah, this one, no,
over that
it's
one,
like
yes.
you burnt your test in a fiery pit.
Those two, the top two, there's no difference really between how they're going to get scored.
No, because you can go.
Well, I don't know. It says no more questions can be answered. Can they be changed? I don't know. I don't know if on this one you can change your answer from C to D and submit, but you can't go to a new question. I don't know. I haven't tried that. So
what's the default on that?
The default on a new one is open attempts are submitted automatically.
So just leave it at that.
That's what I would use.
Yeah, that's the one I do actually.
And it says, you know, what happens if so if the student is actively working on the quiz at the time, then the countdown timer will automatically submit. Okay, let's see. I'm going to switch it and see what it says. I've never read this one. Setting controls when students fail to submit their quiz before time. Student is actively working on a quiz, then the countdown timer will automatically submit an attempt for them. But if they have logged out, then this setting controls what happens. I don't like that one either. So I'll be honest, I don't know why you'd have anything other than this one. Time's up, turn in your paper. It's done, right? I mean, how many times do we set this to exactly how long we think? I mean, generally, okay, it's going to take 35 minutes, so I set 70. And there's always somebody sitting over there at 70 minutes and goes, I'm almost out of time, Mr. Porter. I'm like, how are you still? This was such a hard test. And it's usually an A student. They've tried to, anyway.
Yeah.
You can actually add time to that too
while it's on, you can change it. So if as long as there's time left. If there's only 5 minutes left and they say, I'm not going to get this done, I could change it to 75 and then their clock changes.
You have to change it to 75. Don't say add like 5 more minutes, because if you would do that, you put 5, it'll close everything.
Everybody.
Yeah, because it runs off of what it.
This submission grace period right here is tied to this. So if you said there's a grace period, then you have to say, okay, you've got another 10 minutes to submit. Again, I'm not sure why. I'm sure there's some collegiate reason that you're giving kids time to do that. But
essay questions. You could still actually be answering an essay question.
But would you just add time limit to the test then?
I would.
Do the same thing, right?
Yeah. I like adding more time as opposed to messing with that.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if you want to experiment to see what happens.
So that's the timing block. Do you have any questions on that? Anybody have anything to add? I think that's confusing. I really just use when it opens, time limit, and make sure I make it open to TIMs that are submitted automatically. That's my big thing. Grade, what categories I'm going to go in. You can see this person has tons of categories. I'm going to put it in, second quarter assessments. You can obviously add that later. How many times can they? Okay, let's go here. This grade to pass has nothing to do with passing the test. Okay? There's a flag that you can set that says whether you've passed or not before you can move on. So I have quizzes that kids can take an infinite number of times, but they have to pass the quiz to get to see the next thing. This is, what are you considering a pass? For instance, to retake my Chapter 5 tests, which I've got kids who want to do, they have to get a 9 on a 10-point quiz to move on. If they don't have a 90%, and that's grades, that's points out of how many you've assigned it. So on my quiz, I would say assign 10, so for them to have passed it, to move on, they have to get a 9. You could set that as a 6 if you're saying you just have to pass, whatever. But that's what that is for. It's not used anywhere in the gradebook. It has nothing to do with the gradebook. It's just to flag this as passed. So you might have intervention activities that you do. Where's what?
Grade to pass.
Yeah, I'll have to. That's part of restrictions that use. Is it you can use anywhere else?
I totally use it. By getting a 9 or whatever you set that at. On the outside, when he shows you that elsewhere, there's a box that's to the right side of this particular assignment, which will generate a green check mark, letting the student know that they've made an adequate score for it and can now move on to the next
So they see it. That's what I wondered.
Yes.
Because we already know what they need to pass.
Right. This is like passing is a completion. Think of it like that. Grade to complete. Should say to complete. That would be a better verbiage there. Yeah. I could change that. Okay. So along with this, how many times can they take it? In general, a test may only be once. But if this is a formative quiz, you can say anywhere between 1 to 10 or all the way to unlimited. Okay. So if I say you can retake this 5 times, then the next question comes out of grade and says, well, then what grade counts? Well, you can do the highest grade. I don't do that. I do the last attempt you made. So if you go down, you've got to keep going and bring it back up. Because if you're guessing and you guess wrong, I don't want you to get the best guess. I want you to get the last guess. So on this, you can see the options here. You can do the highest grade you ever got. You can do the average grade. You can say, well, your first grade is the one that counts. Or you can do the last grade time. I do the last when I'm doing these kind of things.
So you're not completely evil. That's
not completely evil. You could do average, but then they never get to 9. They never get to 9. So right,
that one is harsh.
So anyway, those are if you give more than 1 attempt. Now, if it says 1, that's grayed out. So if I give more than 1, which one counts? And then you have to decide which one. How you're going to grade that item. Okay. So like I said, I do last attempt. And on those kind of things that you have to get, I'll say unlimited. But your last one counts, you can keep retrying. Okay, so that's the grade. Do you have questions on the grade? Okay. So layout, never touch it. Every question is set as a new question on every page. You don't have to do it that way. There's other ways to do it. But I want only one question on the page when they're taking the test so that the chance of anybody seeing anybody else's is 0.
It really works with the next one, the best as far as question behavior.
And this is the defaults, right? So this is shuffle within questions. So what it's going to do, it's going to do a new page for every question, and then every question, it's going to shuffle the answers. So my ABCD and his ABCD are totally different ABCDs. You can
Just
undo
leave
that
that.
if you want to, but I'm not sure why you ever would.
Then everybody's would be the same.
Everybody's would be the same.
Okay.
So right now, and this
Leave
is the
that.
default behavior, every question gets a new page, and every question is shuffled as well.
I've had intervention specialists wanted to be the same because they actually read the entire test
Oh,
to
yeah.
all the kids at the same
Okay,
time.
there's a good example.
So,
Yeah.
but you could actually make a completely separate test for your
Yeah,
intervention
with the
specialist.
accommodations.
Yeah, with all the accommodations on it, and it looks exactly the same as everybody else's,
Right.
except for that.
Yeah, when I used to do Computer One, it's easier now than it was then, but you just make your test for your whole class, and then hit copy, and make the alteration for the IEP kids, and then they only make it so they only see one, and the other kids see the other.
Yeah.
So, let's see. There's more things to the layout. So, navigation method free means they can go wherever they want to. When they're in a test, if you haven't seen it before, like my last test they just took has the block up here that shows every single question, and they can go, I want to go down here, and they can skip around their test. That's what free means. You don't have to be free. You can say sequential, and means they can only go next,
Yeah.
next, next. I'm not sure why. So you couldn't find the one that the kid next to you was on, possibly?
But I tell you, this is so much better than 1.9. 1.9
So I go back. Nope, we don't need to talk about old.
I
We only
think,
talk about what we got.
see, I think I would want sequential just because, especially with the IEP kids, they would just want to see.
Well, they're
one
all random
in
anyway,
order.
though. Every question's random anyway. The order's random. I mean, unless you undo the
Oh,
random
I thought
order.
you meant sequential for what they're seeing. They're seeing number one, and number.
No, they always see that.
Oh,
Here,
they
let
see
me-
it in sequential. Okay.
Yeah, let me.
Sequence here is talking about the way it's laid
Yeah,
out.
so
Not the way it's
I don't
numbered.
know if I have access
Right.
to my other course for how I'm logged in. I would have to go to
So
another
Brian,
browser.
sequential is the layout, not the order.
Yes. So they can't move around. Let me
So
show you
leave
real
it
fast.
free then, at the default.
Free is the default. Let me show. I'm going to go on to my last test because it'd be easier to understand it.
I thought it made it sound like it was all over the page, like all the questions.
No. I'll show you right here. This is what. Okay, this is what free looks like. So I'm gonna continue to preview. So right here, it means they have navigation and they can move around and go back to questions. So if they're down here on question 38 and they're like, oh, I got 10 wrong, I can go right back up here. It allows them to skip around questions, which the other way does not. Give them.
If they skip a question, does it do that blue there? Like, let's say they skip.
So if I'm taking this and I'm on 27 and I want to remember to come back here, I can hit flag the question, and now see the little thing in the corner.
Okay.
And if I answer the question, it shows that I answered the question. See how it's grayed in? I
Okay.
answered that one. I haven't answered this one. So it shows me which ones I've answered, and if I had a problem on that one, I can go back later to the one that I flagged, and then I go, okay, I got that. Now I'll remove the flag.
Do the kids know all this, or do we train them on this as we?
That is up to you to tell your kids that when
Okay.
you do the quiz, and it would be that's a good first one to do a really low point quiz and
Yeah.
say, hey, they'll see that they get filled in, but they may not know what flag means.
Right.
That
right.
that it means that I can come back and
So do a test.
come back to it later, and you can see right here when they're done, they'll be able to finish the attempt, and it doesn't say finish. I think it says submit right there. On the test.
Any kid that's in Trail now should have experienced this.
Yeah,
at least
because
through my class.
It's not like you're the only teacher looking at doing quizzes. I mean,
Yeah.
if they,
That's
unless
fine,
they're
that's
new.
fine.
I mean, if they're
Yeah.
new, they may not have ever done it before. Okay, so that's what that means, the free versus that. Okay, so shuffle. Do you want to shuffle the answers within the question? I don't know why. I guess I now know why one person might, if it's an IEP teacher and they're reading them to them. And then down here, this is when they can see how they did on the test, okay? So during the attempt, this is default, okay? They can only see what their answer was. They can't see anything else. After the attempt, and this after is delayed by 2 minutes, I think. They'll be able to see the points they got and the overall feedback. And then later, or no, this is immediately. This is immediately.
Yeah,
so they can just see what points they got. But then here, well, this is not. It's open for them. It's still open up in the date and time. Okay. This is after they submitted. This is while they're taking the quiz.
Yeah.
This is after they said I'm done.
That's after they
submit. And then 2 minutes later, they'll get to see this. So they have to wait 2 minutes to see how they actually did on the test. And that's built into Moodle so they can't try to use the back button, because they used to be able to in 1.8. They used to be able to submit, get their answer and go back, change the answers and resubmit. Well, now they don't know what's right and wrong until it's too late to go back.
Okay.
And so then they see what they're grading. And this is after the quiz is closed out, and you can see there's not really a big difference between these two, other than now they can see what the right answer was later when the quiz is completely closed. They don't know what the right answer was, they just know how they did on the thing. You can change that, by the way. This is all up to you when you want them to be able to see stuff. Okay. The only one that I would probably look at changing is this one. If you're going to let them retake it, and that's why the difference between here and here, if they're retaking it, obviously you don't want to tell them the right answer, because they can still retake it, and you just told them the answer. Well, how are they not going to get 100? Yeah, okay. So that's what that's for, okay? Appearance, how many decimal places, I don't know why, I've never changed any of that. Extra restrictions, okay, so this is an important one for everybody. Require a password. I do require a password. Why do I require a password? Especially on a test. On a quiz I won't, that they can take as many times as they want to. But I have had a student in second block take the tests in the library while it's first block, and then she walked in and said, I got 100 on your test, you know, and I'm like, okay, you have to do the retest now, because she wasn't a 100-point student. I didn't accuse her of cheating and say, you cheated, you've never got 100 in my class, but you didn't take it under my supervision. How do I know what you were doing? And you're the only person who got 100 and you weren't in the room? I have a problem with that. So now for summative stuff, I always put a password in there, and then when they walk in, it says the password is whatever. You can change it immediately after your kids get in the class. So like your first block comes in and you say the password is orange, they all type in orange and they're all on the test, you go in here and change it to banana. Now, if they walk out first block and say the password was orange, and nobody else can take it because you have to know it's banana now to get into it. So this is the password to start the test.
Yeah, if for some reason they end up out of the test while it's still going on, they'll have to go to the new password.
Yeah, anytime they try to come in, it'll require that password. So that's a summative only thing for me. I don't put it in for formative stuff. I've never had a kid try to do a formative exercise early anyway. Okay, so that's that. Require a network address. That is us, 10.66. That means you have to do it here at Trail. If it's a formative one that can do at home, all you have to do is delete that. Now they can do it anywhere. Okay, so if you want them to be able to do it from home, you just delete that. That's all. The default is that it's in there because it's harder for you to remember that number than it is for you to hit the delete key. Right? So
if you leave anything in that box, they will not be able to open it.
Okay.
So if you deleted everything but that last decimal
point.
Yeah, see how small it is, how hard it is to see?
You can't get in that. Nobody will ever.
Nobody can open it.
Okay.
So all of our addresses here at Trail start with 10.66. So if that's in there, it's saying you must be here to take the test. Okay. So other restrictions: enforced delay between first and second attempts. I always use this. I'm letting my students retake that quiz as many times as they want to get a 90% on in order to retake the test. Okay, they have 5 things they have to do to retake the test, by the way. But can they just go submit, do it again, submit, do it again? No, they can't. I say, okay, between the first and second attempt, you have to wait 2 hours. And then subsequently after that, you have to wait, I don't know, 1 hour. Okay, so they're not just going in there and guessing and trying again and guessing and taking again. Okay, now that isn't actually what I use. I use 30 minutes, so that they have to at least take a break before they come back in. Most intelligent people could remember it for 1 minute if you didn't have if you just let them just go in, they could just keep going and going and going until they've got it. That's what that's about. Is if you're going to let them redo things unlimited times, that may be long, but that's what that's for. Okay, so that's I don't even know what the show more is here. We don't use browser security.
So, if I understand you right, do you the required password? Do you reset it every bell?
Well, I only have 2 classes in a row, right? So I don't have to worry about that. I have the password, so that you have to walk in my room. But if I had a first and a fourth block test, I would reset it at the end of the first block.
Okay.
But mine are second and third block.
Yeah.
Even if they walk out and said the password was orange, okay, thanks. It already says that on the wall. That's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
But especially if you had orange and brown geometry, okay? You don't teach geometry. You don't want the kids today to all the kids that are not going to be in the class till tomorrow, and then they come in and they go, oh, I didn't know, Mrs. Brown, I couldn't take the test, right? So that's why I use password, and that's why I change it. I used to have it. I had hardware first, and then plan period second, and hardware third. So there was, and especially with lunch, there was 2 hours in there that they could tell each other, and then somebody else could take the test, which is exactly what happened. So anyway, that's what that's for. So I do use it, so nobody can come into it.
All right, what's the appearance show more? I don't know if you'll recognize that.
What are appearance? Show blocks during quiz attempts. I don't know what that one is. And normal blocks will be shown during. Don't know. I've actually never expanded any of these before. I expand the whole thing.
Now I have done the security one, and basically what it does is it full screens the quiz so that nothing else.
Oh, does it?
You can't navigate away.
So it's kind of like going to a browser type.
Yeah, it prevents you basically from going online to ask, Google for an answer. Which, if you want to use it, that might be a good idea for a math teacher though that wants to keep them from going to some of those math sites to solve the problem. Because that's one of the things that Mr. Alexander has complained about in the past. That they could just go to whatever, I don't know what the site is. Okay, and then put in thing, and then got the answer, and I don't. That's why I can't do them online. I've never tried to use that before. See, that's why it's better if more people are in here, because I learned stuff too. Okay, we're almost done with the setup. This basically just says if you can put feedback in. So here I'm going to add more feedback fields. So you can say down here, I just added more fields. So if they get a 90% or better, you're going to say, you are the bomb. Okay, and they'll get that in their feedback. That's what that's for. I don't use this. I don't use those at all. But you can have it say at certain grades they get different pop-up feedback when they're done. You should retake this. Or
So let's see. If this says hide, this is hide or show. This is just whether they can see it yet. I don't use any of the group mode, but this is where you could go and say, well, this isn't where you'd say that either on the groups. That'd be in restrict access down here. I've never used any of these on the common module.
Those grouping ones are basically so that when it comes time for you to look at the results later on, you could look at the results based on your groupings.
So I would just leave it as separate.
Yeah, separate groups of what you're already set at.
This is what I was talking about. You can make a separate test for IEPs. The restrictions is something that's awesome. So like, let's say I want this test to be done by my one group of kids. Okay, so I can add a restriction, and I can add a group, and then I could say, well, any group can see this one. Okay. Or I could say that only group 4-38 can see this one. And this eyeball right here, if I click the eyeball, it means if they're not in the group, they don't even know it exists on Moodle at all. Otherwise, if I have the eyeball unchecked, it will say you can't get into this because you're not part of this group. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, and then I'm going to hit save and display so you see what I'm talking about on that restriction. So if you don't have it, oh, I'm sorry, save and return to course. So if you don't have it checked, they're going to say, see it grayed out and say not available unless you belong to that group. If you have the eyeball poked, it's not even there at all. Now, you're going to see it no matter what, along with that restriction. So when we were on my class and you saw that huge mess of stuff there, all that stuff underneath here, that's all the restrictions I have on everything in my class. I have a lot of restrictions in my class. So anyways, let's go back into it and go to edit settings. I'm going to take that one off there. I just wanted you to see what that one was. And that's under restrict access. All I have to do is X that out. By the way, you can add multiple restrictions here that'll say that, okay, you can only do that if you got a greater than a 90% in the class. I mean, you can set it all kinds of restrictions.
Yeah, you could say that you have to have scored a 37% or better on this one, and your name has to be Joe Smith.
I mean, it's all kinds of the restrict access is new with the newest version of Moodle, and it's really awesome for differentiating your Moodle. It makes what you see as a teacher a mess, but what makes what they see as a student happen automatically. And you can make 5 kids in the classroom think they're on the same Moodle course, and they're getting totally different things. So it's pretty cool. I'm going to take that restrict access out. And now I'm just going to say save and display. That's it for setting up the quiz. Okay, so right now we have a quiz set up basically the way we want it to. We said it's 1 hour, it's going to be the last attempt, but there's no questions in it yet. So the next thing we have to do is edit our quiz and put in questions. But before I do, I'm going to the question bank down here, okay, to talk about categories before we start adding questions.
Where is it?
Right down here on the left-hand side, it says question bank.
Okay.
Now, this person has all these questions. Actually, I deleted a bunch of stuff. Oh, it's too bad. I deleted all those things in there.
So it's just the question bank that you've already established?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, oh wait, no. There's 8 pages. So let me do this. Show 154. Now, the problem with this person's, I didn't make this, is that if you were looking for a question, all those questions are in one big pile right now. And one of the things you're going to want to do is to make categories for your questions. There's no category here. If we go to my class, you'll see 15 different categories. So if we put our questions in categories, it makes it easier to reuse them later because we can find them. I would challenge the teacher who originally made all these to find the questions that they want, because they don't have them in any kind of order. Basically in file folders, if you want to think about it that way.
You have more options with more categories, because then you can even actually apply groups of questions from a category. Just say, like, I want 3 questions from this category, I want 4 questions from this category. And
for a semester exam, it makes it really easy.
Populate a test like that.
Okay, so here's the question bank. I'm going to go down to categories, and you'll see there aren't any. Okay, the only category in this whole class is the default category. Okay, and then because I made a test up here, it's adding one for that. But I'm going to add a category. So I'm going to add a category down here.
Can you go back, because I was still thinking about the last
So
thing.
it has this default category for this class. Okay. And then it has one for that test. Kind of ignore that for a second. So you can see right here it has the default. There's nothing else other than that quiz we made up there. In fact,
right, but so when you went to edit quiz, how did you get to edit categories?
here, let me go all the way back to the
That's
class,
what I
because this
meant.
is the easy. I'm all the way back here to the class. If you look down here on question bank right there, you go to question bank.
Okay.
Okay, and under question bank now is questions and categories. It's also where you can import
questions.
questions.
Under question bank. Okay.
Right. So I'm going to hit categories, and there aren't any categories other than the default one. So I can add one under this, and I'm going to add chapter 5.
So when you're telling me when I'm writing my questions for the final exam, I need to
whenever you make a quiz, make sure there's already a category that you want to put those questions in.
like chapter 5,
right.
major C's.
So I'm going to make one that says chapter 5. You could make it say, you know, if we knew that this was going to be on division, you could take chapter 5 division. Whatever you want to make it. Those are just words. But so I'm going to go down to the bottom and just say add category. And now you're going to see that in my course, that's the default, that just means the course, I've got a category called Chapter 5 Division. And I could make more ones down here. I could make one that says, I could just make them say Chapter 1 through Chapter 5. And you can see it showed up. I got no questions in it.
It puts it in alphabetical order,
Yeah.
but you can move them if you want to. If it makes more sense to,
Right.
you can move them around.
So I'm just saying, but when you're ready to start adding questions, just say, okay, this belongs in, okay? Whether it's by chapter, by indicator, however it works for you. So I've just added chapter 1 and chapter 5.
If you don't add a category, it puts them all in one big mess.
It just puts them all in that one big
At
mess.
default. Okay.
Right.
I think of a category as like a folder. You can actually
Yeah.
have folders inside of folders. So you can put a
Yeah,
category.
and see how it says
underneath
parent
another
category?
category.
So if I wanted to make more sub things inside chapter 5, I could say basic questions
Okay.
inside there and say add category. So now inside chapter 5, I've got another subcategory. So you could make easy questions, medium questions, hard questions, so that you even break up your stuff even more.
Questions have pictures or whatever you want to come up with.
Just think of it as a way to organize.
Yeah.
Because right now, if I go to questions, all that and all of this is kind of a mess. How would I know what they belong in? So if you've already done questions, you can later go back and say, okay, these all belong in, and I go down to the bottom and say move to basic questions. And now all those are in basic questions. So you can organize it later. It's easier just to put them in there while you're going, because later it's hard to figure out what all those things belong in.
Because you had to preview all of them because you're like, what is that?
Yeah, I don't remember that.
But that
I mean,
comes-
it's easy this year. Next year, 4 years from now, you got to remember what the question was. Ugh. I mean, I have a hard time
Which
that,
goes
with
into-
last year's.
Yeah, which is going to go into the naming, which he'll talk about.
Yeah. Okay, and that, so first of all, I just make folders, categories to put questions in. We're only going to add one kind of question today, which we can add a number of ways. We can do it just where I was under questions right here. I can add questions. I'm going to do it in the quiz right now. So I'm going to go back to that quiz that we made. And while I'm right here it says edit quiz. Okay? When we edit a quiz, that's where we decide. That button right there, see, right now it's worth 100 points. Right there is where I have to say how many points this quiz is worth. And I already said it's going to be worth 10, so I'm going to hit 10 and save. Okay? So no matter what I add, there's no questions in here now. No matter what I add, altogether it's going to put it worth 10 points in the grade book. Okay? Which is a weird place for it. I don't know why they put it there. So I'm going to add questions. We're going to add a question right now. We're only going to do the basic multiple choice question. All you have to do, because I'm going to add it to this quiz, and it's automatically going to go into my bank at the same time. Okay, anytime we add a quiz in Moodle, it's going to go in the bank. So I'm going to add, and I'm going to say add a new question. So I'm going to make a question. Okay, so I'm going to add a new question, and like I said, we're only going to do one. Now there's all these different kinds of questions here. We're only going to look at multiple choice today because we're already coming close to time and your head might be hot right now already. Okay, so I'm going to hit add. Now, up top, the first things it asks is where do you want this to go? No, I don't want it there. I want it in chapter 5. We do chapter 5 test. So the first thing you do is say what category it goes into, which is why we did categories first. Because if the category doesn't exist, it's all going in the basic one. So you have to make your category first. Now I can do it. Okay, so every single one of these has question name and question text. They're all required, every kind. The question name no one sees but me. You. Okay? The question text is what the student sees. I will tell you that when we looked at that, the question name didn't tell us a lot on this bank of questions. In mine, it tells me a whole lot. Okay? So what my question name starts with is the chapter and the I can statement. So all my questions start with something like that, meaning it's a chapter 5 question hitting I can 6. The reason is, remember last year when Bob said, I need a report from all you guys to see how you're meeting your I cans for that chapter. All I had to do is download it, order it by name of the question, all my similar I cans together, and